there, this is August again. So we talked about the libidinal energies, and I defined it in the way that I will be using libidinal energies. And we talked about how alchemy and sexual healing go together. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from, the impetus for learning all of this over, as I mentioned, 3.5 decades. And this might tap into why you're here, possibly. And I ended up here because of trauma. A lot of that trauma was sexual, as you would probably predict by the name of the talk, Sexual Alchemy of Sexual Healing. But a lot of it was just about violence, emotional, psychological, and physical violence as a child. So that on top of sexual abuse, incest, and that sort of thing, kind of gave me a loaded gun when it came to my libidinal energies being in trouble. So for a while, I acted mine out in addictive behaviors. So for instance, my sexuality expressed itself in huge, wide behaviors, which clinically you could call sexual addiction and that sort of thing. I like to stay away from psychological labels because there's a big old book that labels everything humans possibly can do as, you know, being pathological. And I don't think addiction is, well, I'll just address sexual addiction. I don't think it's about sexuality at all. Obviously, it involves libidinal energy because, as I've mentioned, libidinal energy is in everything, creativity, everything. But when one's energy is thwarted, so the medical term for the injury that I incurred is called post-traumatic stress disorder. Actually, it's complex PTSD. And a lot of soldiers get it, and now it's talked about, but when I was raised and when I was even in my 20s, 30s, that we never heard of that. But when you go back and look at Homer's The Iliad, he talks about the soldiers having trauma. I don't think he uses the word trauma. That was research I did a while ago, but trauma's been around a long time, as you can imagine. We have been a violent species for a really long time. They found the bones of what they were calling the oldest American, and it was a female. She was around 15 or 16, and she had damage to her bones that could have only been caused by a human being. They know that by the way the muscles rotated around the bone and misformed it. I forgot what the explanation is, but there's proof that we've been violent for a really long time. So PTSD has been around for a long time, but now at least we're identifying it. My parents' generation did not, but my generation is really beginning to label these things and talk about them, and there's Me Too movement and all of that. So we're starting to really start talking about even sexual abuse. Sexual abuse of children is a little more difficult, and the injuries stay inside a lot longer from my perspective. I also went through date rape in college and molestation at 17 by a family member. But the early abuse was really insidious. No pun intended. It was incestuous, but incest is not just about these lascivious images we have in mind, about sexuality and that you see on the internet and stuff. It's not like that at all. It can be. There are a wide array of experiences. Everyone's is their own. But from my experience in being in groups with people who've been through child sexual abuse and incest, they're all really different, but they all have like one catch-all place, and that is the place of how it affects your libidinal energies. not just your sexuality, but everything. You know, how you operate in the world is affected. And I've really seen that play out in my life. So next time we'll talk about how to move forward with treating what's going on in your life related to disrupted libidinal energies.